Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bikini in the Brain. I am here with the fully committed Bikini Ashley. Let's look at this shirt here today. She is looking GTL'd with the pineapple hat to match the banana shirt. We went for it. I don't know why we went for it today.
We're dressed as tourists today.
Yeah, we're dressed as tourists today. So
tourists in Vegas.
Tourists in Vegas. Yes. Now Ashley is a trooper today. She is sick, Ashley, today. You can hear it in her voice.
Yes, so I sound a little weird today. Hopefully I sound normal next week. So my apologies if it's not as pleasant as usual.
Trooper, though. I said we could shoot it another day. She was like, no. We do a podcast on Monday. And so
No.
It's commendable because of the mindset that you have is like, no, this is my routine. It's going to happen on Monday. Like, that's just...
I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
That's...
Unless I'm like really like, if I can't get out of the bed, then I can't do it.
Yeah.
Actually, I'd probably just do the like a Zoom from like my bed with a laptop.
That's one of the things, one of the positives about Ashley right there. One of the strong positives. She says she's going to do it. She's going to do it. So...
I try.
That's a cool thing. It goes back to our last bikini... what do you call it? Bikini cake recipe or whatever it is. Yeah. Same thing, dedication and saying, hey, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do it. It's my routine.
And I just want to put this out there because I know somebody's probably going to be like, oh, that's so rude that you're going to get Adam sick. Well, Adam was actually sick. I'm pretty sure we had the same thing.
Yeah.
Except for he got over his quicker.
Yeah. I'm still sick. I coughed this morning. And
And
every time, what's weird. Yeah. We have like the same sign. It's what I was asking. I was like, hey, I was texting her. I was like, is your skin like really sensitive? And I was like washing myself with like a loofah, the sponge loofahs, right? That's what they're called. And it felt like it was like a wire bristle.
Yeah.
It's like, it hurts so bad to like wash myself right now.
Oh yeah. I had aches. I was achy. Right now, I don't feel weak. Like I was feeling pretty weak over the weekend. But now it's more of just like in my head. Yeah. So now it's like headache, stuffy nose, sore throat. So now it's all head related and my body seems to be doing okay. But yeah.
Great. I think it's good timing to have it now versus later for the, the Olympia prep, but still, I mean, you don't want to get sick at all during Olympia prep.
Yeah.
This is like our first, this week is like, okay, this is our go week. We're going hard now. We're 12 weeks out. And we're sick. So
yeah, well, I still got a good workout.
Got your workouts in, did your posing class, did the glute camp. Good. Mm-hmm. That was a good turnout. It was fun. So anyway, today's podcast is basically training styles for different physiques, which I thought was a really good topic because we go into, different structures. And I was like, shout out to Milena for coming up with that topic.
Yeah.
Too, because these things, they do matter. How you train is going to matter. There is going to be some variances between everyone. And let's go ahead and see, maybe you're doing the right things or wrong things. Mm-hmm. And you get to do it, what's right for your physique,
Exactly.
And that's the thing. And that's why, we keep going into these podcasts where we talk about bikini as an art form, and this is probably one of the bigger parts of that art form is being able to dissect and structure a plan for that physique. So.
Absolutely. This is like one of those examples that if I gave you my workout routine, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to apply to you in the same way that it would benefit me, because we're all different. Just like diets, everyone's macros are different. Well, everyone's training should be different because no one's the same. We all have different goals we're working towards. We all have different genetics, et cetera, et cetera. So there's should be a lot of variances in your training program compared to somebody else's.
Yeah. And so first thing we'll go over is the three main different body types, which is going to be your ectomorph, mesomorph, and endomorph. You guys have probably all heard those terms before. But what do they actually mean and why does it matter? Well, there's going to be different training styles for those. And some of those are more diet styles too for those three than it is even training styles. Mm-hmm. So just on a basic rule of thumb, it's really rare that someone is a pure any of those things. So a pure mesomorph is pretty rare. There's, a pure ectomorph is pretty rare too. So ectomorph, we'll start with that. That's the smallest one. That's the more petite person. They generally have a really easy time with body fat. They don't generally, those are the kind of the skinnier people who don't have a hard time. They have a hard time actually gaining body fat. They're just always that. They can kind of eat whatever, but they don't put on a lot of muscle either. Those are the hard gainers, you'd want to call them. Hard gainers, small bone structure, hard time putting on muscle, and hard time putting on body fat too. Just hard with any weight gain. Sometimes it would be the little skinnier, softer people. That's a start. We're talking about starting structure, not your ending structure. Then you have your mesomorph, which is the structure that everyone would love to be born with. You know, at a conception, I'd be like, hey, if I can make a deal with God, make me a mesomorph.
I don't know, but they're more susceptible to body fat, aren't they?
The endomorphs are.
Oh,
okay. The mesomorphs are the kind of the perfect combination. Now, as you go up in scale, you'll gain a little bit more body fat and a little bit more muscle is basically how it goes. But the mesomorphs generally have a pretty easy time building muscle, not the easiest time building muscle. They have a good muscle base. They have a relatively good level of body fat. They don't gain body fat too easily. They don't lose it. They lose it relatively fast. They don't lose it too fast. Like an ectomorph will lose it too fast, right? Lose it really fast. And then you have, and that's where you're going to find most success in like the bodybuilding division is these guys, and then the endomorphs too. Now the endomorph generally going to be another bigger structure. So the mesomorph goes up a structure size a little bit, more of a medium-based structure. Then you have your endomorph structures, which is the bigger guys. These endomorphs, you're going to see a lot of these are going to be like NFL, like lineman type of guys, like big dudes. They're big people, big joints, big structures. And this is with, goes into bikini and women's bodybuilding and that type of thing too. But more endomorphs you'd find in like women's bodybuilding, that type of thing. So bigger structures, bigger shoulder width. Now, harder time losing body fat, no problem building muscle. Okay, but really hard time losing body fat. Like these are the people that are doing the multiple hours of cardio to get stage lean. You're not going to run into too many endomorphs in bikini division. You might run into some meso-endos, which are kind of the mixture of the two, but you don't run into too many pure endomorphs because the structure is usually so big it doesn't really, they'll generally end up in a bigger category, wellness, figure, or women's physique, something like that. Because it's just hard for them to keep their muscle down. And you've seen some combinations of meso-endos in the past who've tried to do bikini and then they ended up in wellness eventually type of thing. Those are the girls that just didn't work out in bikini. They just didn't work out their legs at all in bikini, and they're trying to run off their legs and keep their cardio up the whole time, and they hated it, but that's the only way they could compete in bikini. We've seen pros even do that, and then they go to wellness and do better in wellness and things like that. So that's typically what you run into. And you can see their joint size, and that's where you run into, where you can kind of visually see it is there. So those are the kind of the setup for this is where are you at with that? What is going to be your thing that you need to work on? If you're an endomorph, your diet should be really, really on point in the off season because it's going to be hard for you to lose body fat. If you're an ectomorph and you lose body fat super, super easy, yeah, you know what, maybe, and you have a hard time getting muscle, maybe, yeah, we do go into a caloric surplus and we gain a little bit, and we gain a little bit of body fat more than the endomorph because we know it's going to come off you a little bit easier, right? The mesomorph, kind of stay balanced right in the middle there. Good time with just keeping your body fat in check in the off season. It's not too hard for you to lose body fat. So it's just how are you going to approach it based on your body type and how you lose body fat too. Now, if you're an endomorph doing bikini, I'm going to say stay lean, like we probably don't even ever go above maintenance calories because you already have enough muscle, or it's easy for you to build muscle and we don't need to be in this huge surplus for you to gain muscle. So there we go. It's into the body types, there. Anything I missed there, you think?
I think it'd be also, we can tap into the cardio for that as well. If you're already struggling to put on muscle, it might not be wise to dedicate a lot of your energy to cardio, you know? And on the opposite end with the endomorphs, it might be a good idea to incorporate more cardio because they can't really lose muscle that easily. But I think this is a great opportunity to kind of go into, the fact versus myth of does cardio actually prohibit you from putting on muscle? Because there is a little bit of yes and a little bit of no answer to that. And I think you can explain it much better.
Yeah. So so here's the thing. There's always going to be this is going to be kind of one of those like spectrum things, right? Like how much, right? So will cardio, as a blanket statement, will cardio cost you muscle? And the answer to that is no. But also yes, right? Yes. So it's to what degree is really what we should be asking. It's not, so it's, now your body, you got to understand every single way you train your body's going to respond with. So if today I decided, hey, I want to train really fast and explosive, well, I'm going to be better next week to be more fast, more explosive in my lifts. So that'd be great for, like we talked about, a football player who needs to explode off the line and block someone. That's a great way to train, right? So my body's going to be more prepared for that the more I train like that. So the same thing happens with cardio. Now, what are we doing when we train with cardio? we're working on the body's ability to take in oxygen to the muscle and perform and run for long distances using glucose as a primary source of energy. And we're also wanting to be efficient at that, so you don't need a lot of excess explosive muscle fibers. So one person's going to train explosive. So if I train explosive, that's now going to make me not as good at running long distances because I'm training explosive muscle fibers, which are designed to get me off the line real quick and block a guy, right? Or explode and jump really high one time, right? Now, I can't do both things on the edges of the spectrum in accession and expect them to be just as good at both. It just doesn't work that way. So I can't run a marathon and expect to be just as explosive as if I didn't run a marathon and train just to be explosive. And vice versa, right? I can't train to be super explosive and all I want to do is train explosive and expect my marathon times to get faster and faster. It's not gonna work because there are two different ways that the muscle has worked and two different types of actual how you're developing the muscle. So in this one, you're going to develop your white muscle fiber, explosive fast twitch. You're going to be able to use a lot of the muscle really, really quickly, and then it's not going to have the best endurance. And on this one, you're going to use a lot of the red muscle fiber. It's going to have good endurance. But the other key to this one, the endurance-based muscle fibers, is they're not big muscle fibers. The red muscle fibers, they're smaller muscle fibers, and the more you train them, the more you're going to develop those, and the less you're going to have of the white muscle fiber in terms of size. Not in actual fibers. There's not going to be less of them. There's going to be less in size because that's what's in demand. So in order for me to run a very long period of time, I need to be an efficient vehicle, right? So when we think of efficient vehicles, we don't think of Hummers, right? And when we think of big, powerful vehicles, we think of like Hummers, right? So that would be the white muscle fiber. We think of efficient vehicles, we think of a Prius, right? It goes for very long periods of time, and that's the kind of muscle you're going to develop, right? You're going to deal with those Prius muscles, long periods of time, not super flashy, right? But they're going to get you there, they're going to keep going, and that's what you're developing there. And that's why you see marathon runners, and none of them look like Hummers, right? They all look like Priuses, right? And that's great because that's how they're training. So yes, the more you train like a Prius, the more you're going to look like a Prius. The more you train like a Hummer, the more you look like a Hummer. That's just the way it works, right? There's no way around that. So sometimes I'll get these one-offs and I'll get people like, I want to train for a marathon and I want to do a bikini competition. And I'm like, have you ever seen a marathon runner with crazy high glutes like that? Like, it doesn't work. Not in today's bikini. Like, it's super, super rare. And that girl would be very genetically blessed if she could do both. But you see like volleyball players, they all have great legs, great glutes, right? Why is that? Well, they're explosive. They're not endurance athletes. They are explosive athletes. It's different. You see sprinters, right? Great legs, great glutes, great shoulders, right? Explosive athlete versus an endurance athlete. So yes, the more you do endurance training, the more you're going to look like that. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're an endomorph, you probably won't be able to be very good at endurance sports. You're just not designed for it. You know, we kind of typically will migrate to sports that we're good at. And that's why you ended up not being a cross-country runner. You know, you did hurdles, right? That was like perfect hybrid for what... I did cross-country too. You did cross-country too?
In high school.
Okay. Not at just college.
For fun.
Yeah, okay. But you would...
There's probably a better analogy out there. Like, that's why I wasn't a shot putter. There you go.
Oh, there you go. Okay, the other direction. All right.
Because that's they're like huge.
Endomorph body types, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you fall into that middle category where you're explosive and still have decent distance, but not long distance. I didn't see you for a long distance runner.
Well, I just did it for fun to stay in shape. I was good at it though.
Really?
I went to states. I placed at states.
That's good.
In cross country. Yeah. Well, just did it for fun.
That's it. Ruins the podcast. My whole theory's off.
No. You know what else I never did? What kind of sports I never gravitated towards? Huh? Freaking team sports. F that.
Yeah, you don't like team sports.
F that. No one is going to hold me back from being great because somebody on my team sucks.
It happens.
F that.
It happens, man.
You know, that's why I was track, gymnastics, even did swimming.
You know what sucks about team sports is what sucks about team sports is you'll play with these guys all year long, right? Like, and you practice 2 hours a day, like these high level teams. And then you get to like the big show, right? You get to the big day. And you realize like not everyone can deal with the pressure the same way. Like I was good in pressure situations with the team because I was like, the team needs me to be my best today. And so it wasn't about me, but that's a mindset you'd have. And some guys would just fold under pressure and like, it'd be like a goalie. And you'd be like, you suck. Like, why are you rooting it for all of us? It's like, and that happened to us so many times where they never showed any signs of sucking until it got to the show. And then you get to this like world tournament and these guys just fall apart and you're like, it sucks. It does suck.
Yeah.
It happens. It happened to me a few times.
Goodness, I couldn't do that.
Oh man, it's brutal. And you just train your whole, so that does, there's a positive and a negative to team sports. I like the camaraderie of the guys club, you know, when you're in like the locker rooms and stuff, but then when that happens, you're like, man, team sports suck.
Yeah, no, I just never appealed to me. I was like, and on the opposite end too, I wouldn't want to feel bad if I messed up for the team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like double.
That's the worst.
Double
feeling.
no.
We went into a shootout for one of these tournaments and it was a big one and I missed the net, which is like, you can miss a shot. The goalie can block you. It's fine. But if you miss the net, like you're a total jerk. Like you ruin it for
even to this day, Adam wakes up in the middle of the night in cold sweats thinking about this.
I don't remember almost none of the goals I remember that I scored, but the ones I missed, I clearly remember. Like looking back at the team and looking at the bench and everyone's just like, you like just disappointed. Like they don't have to say anything. You just look at them. You're just like, don't even want to sit on the bench. Just like embarrassed, ashamed. Oh, it's brutal. Yeah, the coach is looking at you like, dude, I put you out there. There's only 3 guys we could put out there. You missed the whole net. Like, get blocked. That's fine. But miss the net. Yeah. Oh man. So. But anyway, back to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but just to clarify, I didn't just run the hurdles; it was 400-meter hurdles. So that's 1 lap with hurdles. So it's kind of bordering mid-distance, but with some explosive in there as well. Just the fact that I have to jump the hurdles. But thank God I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah, that matches your body type. Though one full medium endurance person you look like.
Not even just like the posterior chain. I was the way I ran too. It was like incorrect. I ran with my chest a little bit too down, which meant I had like a lot of back kick when I was running, and it's not the proper way to do it, but it kind of also explains like my hamstrings, my glutes too, like the way I tilted forward. But yeah.
Isn't that crazy how everyone's body is just different, right?
Yeah.
Like you would just have, and like as you worked your way up, they'd probably try to straighten you more out type of thing, right? If you got to like Olympic level, I don't know.
Well,
how that works.
I mean,
it's just per person.
Ideally, they were trying to work on that in the beginning, but it's just like one of those things. We all have our little techniques.
That's so crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy, and that's why I didn't know that they even had that. That's really interesting because it's based on like the mechanics being slightly different. I just figured,
of course, in every sport, there's little tiny things to fix, or cool. People's golf swing. I can't tell you the difference between a good golf swing and a bad one, but I'm sure a golf coach would be able to be like, oh no, it's 2 up or 2 down, you know? So.
Yeah. No, it's just cool based on your, like, how your muscle balance is how you'd run too, you know?
Yeah.
Makes sense though. I mean, your body's always going to find the path of least resistance.
Yeah,
you know?
there we go.
That's the key thing, and that's with working out too.
True.
So there's this thing, and if you're talking, it falls into today's category too of like, you know, how you train. And so the body's always going to take the path of least resistance. There's this thing called synergistic dominance, which is something it's not super common, but it's common enough that it can be talked about, where it's basically where if one muscle can do another muscle's action, it will take over for that muscle. And this happens a lot on the posterior chain for women, especially, where if, let's say you have an overdeveloped, quad, right? This is not posterior chain, but overdeveloped quad. And you're like, I'm just trying to work my hamstring, but you're doing all compound movements. Well, the body is just more comfortable doing the quad because your quad's so much stronger than your hamstring that's just going to use more of that quad than the hamstring. So you got to go to isolations, right? This happens in the shoulders and traps with some people. Their traps are so overly active that when they do anything like lateral raises, like their traps just activate a lot more than the shoulders, and so they're not getting the same activation because the muscle is just the body's going to take the path of least resistance. And if it's easier to lift that weight with the body using a higher percentage of the trap than the shoulder, then it's going to do it at that time. That's like it's a way for the body to survive more than anything, which is cool. Like, you think about like, pirates back in the days, we had these surgeries or whatever, right? They have a bad leg. Well, they find another path to walk, right? Their body will find another path to move that leg. And so it's a survival mechanism that is in us okay, if that muscle's not working, let's use the one that is working and do the same motion with it because we need to be able to keep moving or else we're going to die, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like one of those things. But it happens even at the smaller scale in bodybuilding. Oh, the trap is more active than the shoulder. Well, let's just keep using more of that trap. So how do you train around that? That would be, go through some stretching before you do your shoulders, do intraset stretching of your traps, pick exercises that make the most sense. In legs, if your quads are being dominant, use more of your hamstring, use more isolation exercises. if you have one hamstring that was injured at one time and another one that wasn't, and you're doing double hamstring stuff and you find the one that wasn't injured doing more of the work, then go to isolations and doing single leg. Like there's all these things that, come into play here.
Mm-hmm. I just want to pause you because I think that's a really good tip that people really need to pay attention to. If you are one of those people that, like, let's say when you do a lunge, you're like, I don't feel it anywhere but my quad, then you need to find an isolation exercise. Lean more towards the isolation exercises for that movement, right? For your glutes, for your hamstrings. Because if not, those quads are just going to become stronger and stronger and stronger, and the balance becomes less good. So again, just to remind you guys, we're in a sport of aesthetics. So we're not really training for performance. We're training to look symmetrical and everything balanced. So if something's already unbalanced and you keep training it more and more and it's getting all the activation, it's just going to throw you off even further. So one thing you didn't mention as well is they can also do or attempt to do a stim machine. We have the Newbie, Newbie New Fit. I use it sometimes, but that's also good for kind of reactivating some of those dormant muscles.
Yeah, and that's the whole theory behind the stim machine. Is basically exactly what you said, waking up dormant muscle groups, getting the highest neuromuscular activity you can during that workout, of course, in that area, and hoping after that workout's done, it carries over for a period of time where it's just, you woke those muscle fibers up and now you're using a higher percentage of that muscle. So, good tip on that. Now, I guess we'll go into
I just want to also hit a little bit more of the cardio because I think that because we're talking about, girls that have heavy quads, there, even the variances of cardio can differ, meaning HIIT cardio versus long steady state cardio, even a cardio equipment. So somebody that was already quad dominant, let's say bikini competitor, which in bikini, you don't want big, heavy, blocky quads. But if that's you, you probably shouldn't be doing the spin bike for cardio, because think about it. What are you activating when you're doing the stationary bike? Most of the time it's your quads. Okay. So maybe move on to something more just like running, flat running, long distance running. Because if you want to go into the more scientific reason why HIIT versus steady state for keeping muscle, preserving muscle versus maybe somebody's even trying to decrease their muscle size, because that happens too. Just like you were mentioning those girls that are more of the endomorphs, but they're trying to be bikini, or maybe they're in between wellness and they're in between wellness and bikini, and I don't know which way to go, and they're trying to fit that bikini mold, but their legs are too big. Maybe they shouldn't be doing hits or bursts or sprints. Maybe they should be doing just running for a long period of time.
Yeah. So, and some of this now, some of this I want to go into too is more so bodybuilder theory than proven science, right? More some of it's bro science.
I'm going to use I like your analogy, the blacksmith arm.
Yeah.
So even though the blacksmith arm is when one arm becomes really big in comparison to the other, because they keep hammering with that same arm, right? Kind of like if you were to do that with the spin bike. It's not necessarily lifting, but you're using that same motion over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
So...
And this is some of the things that are more common sense, right? That are the arguments are common sense, because if you go to, and I've been to these, whether it's a training workshop or whatever it is, they're going to say, okay, there's aerobic and anaerobic exercises. And when anything that goes, at least that's what it used to be. I haven't been in school in a long time, but they used to say anything past 25 reps becomes a aerobic exercise, right? Aerobic activity, which would mean you're not going to build any muscle with it because it's an aerobic activity, right? So because you're doing more cardio based, so you're using your muscle for endurance, it's not going to be done, no muscle building is going to happen, right? But then common sense, and you're like, are you sure? Because I've seen guys that are cyclists.
Oh yeah.
They don't train their quads.
They're
for
juicy.
Anything outside of biking, and they have some big ass quads.
Juicy quads.
Those or the skater, the speed skaters, right? In the Olympics. I'm like, that is past 25 strides that they're taking when they're doing that, when they're doing that speed skating.
Oh yeah, even just the long distance cyclists, their quads are juicy too.
Super, right? You see them and I'm like, man, they look like
they're all like that too. It's not just a
wellness boys.
Yeah, wellness boys.
Wellness voice. So obviously something's happening. They are building muscle. There's no way to really refute that when you see it like visually, right? But yeah, you're like, but they're doing aerobic activity though. How are they building so much muscle? Well, it is possible to build muscle doing aerobic activity. Obviously they're doing HIIT cardio even when they're doing their long distance steady state cardio. In a lot of these scenarios, the cyclists at least, because they're going uphill and then it's like a HIIT, and then it's cruising, still going fast, and then uphill again, and then it's all these different speeds and whatnot. So the argument's like, okay, is it the temporary hits that's causing that, or is it the whatever? But either way, they're doing aerobic the whole time, right? By definition. Yes, you can build muscle. So if you're quad dominant, then you probably don't want to go on the cycle, the cycle, right? The same thing happens with just time and degree of these things. So if you are really juicy in the quads, yeah, you're probably going to do less HIIT cardio, and maybe do more endurance-based activity. Because even if you do just a little bit more endurance-based activity, maybe you will lose a little bit more of that quad by doing some, steady state walking or doing people are really, I don't see the stair mill causing that much quad growth personally. I do see people wanting to avoid it. So I haven't really seen too much of it. I've seen a lot of women avoid it, and I've seen them go to it. I've never seen the quad like growth that they worry about with it. So I'm still on the fence with that one. Someone who has bigger quads, or maybe they're overdeveloped, I'll tend to stay away from it unless they're not giving enough, they're not losing enough on the treadmill. Then I'll put them to it. But that's another thing that people talk about all the time is, should I avoid the stairs because my quads are too dominant? And I'm like, I don't see it happening that much. I don't see it like someone developing quads on the stair mill doing steady state cardio. So yeah, as far as should you avoid, if you have bigger quads and you have overdeveloped quads, yes, I'm going to go more of an endurance activity. If you're an ectomorph with small legs, I'm going to probably do more HIIT cardio to try to hopefully build some legs up. If you're someone who lacks the density of the legs, I'll probably do more HIIT cardio too, hoping to get them a little bit more dense. If you're someone who's overly dense on the legs, I'll probably do more steady state too. So will that actually work, or is it just the exercises itself? I don't know. We combine so many things that I'm not sure if that's what works. More of a bodybuilder science that I use for that. And so, but if someone has overdeveloped quads, you'll see me reduce their quad exercises quite a bit and give them endurance cardio. So which one's doing it? Yeah, I don't know. But
it's like one of those things that better safe than sorry, right? So is it that's causing the big quads? Maybe, maybe not. But just like we approach many other things, like why keep it in when there could be a better alternative? Yeah. Maybe it's affecting you, maybe not, but just to be on the safe side. Yeah, let's just take it out.
That's why I get a lot of questions on peak week, because I do really clean peak weeks. I'm like, okay, cut your artificial sweeteners that week. And I'm actually a lot less crazy about it than I used to be. Now it's like just the week of.
I'm too. I've been more generous with my sweeteners as well. Yeah, because I find that it really hasn't made a difference.
Yeah, and you've done so many peak weeks that it's like it's obvious now, right?
With the exception of some sweeteners, some of them definitely will.
Yeah,
but like stevia should be fine. Yeah, sucralose should be fine too.
So I've been, I'm more of a cut them the days, the last few days before the show as like a just in case. It's always like a just in case, and then people will be like, well, can I eat this? Can I eat this? Can I eat this? And I'm like, you probably can, but just in case, what if it makes you 1% better to just clean up your diet for 3-4 days, right? Like it's probably healthy for you to get it out of your system for a few days, right? If at all, but it's definitely not going to make you worse. Yeah. So, but will that make you 1% better? Maybe. And if we do 6 things that make you 1% better, you're 6% better. So why don't we just do that for 4 days and stop complaining about not having whatever it is for like 3 days? Like just, you know what I mean? So it's kind of one of those things, but probably a lot of them don't make sense, but we're just doing it anyway, so it's just, that's bodybuilding. You're not gonna be able to figure every single thing out forever. So a lot of these things are kind of like, well, just in case, maybe it'll make you just a tiny bit better. So, yeah, there you go. Now, going into the weights we already kind of did that. The newbie training versus veteran lifter. I guess we go into weights for each type too. So like a newbie training versus a veteran lifter for body types. This is going to be a pretty good one because this does vary a lot based on experience, And so, okay. And I like this one because a lot of times people want to know when they've reached their genetic potential. They're like, when do I reach and it's this, and so you guys know the short answer to that there's no way of knowing. And no matter, it's really, really hard to figure out when you've reached your kind of genetic threshold for when you're going to just start gaining that 1 to 2 pounds a year of muscle. It's really hard. And that's basically where you reach it, is when you're doing everything perfectly and you make very little progress. You make like 1 pound progress a year, maybe like for a female, like 1 pound, 2 pound progress a year. And that's after, if you're doing everything perfectly. Because that's the problem, is that when people ask that, a lot of times they're not doing things perfectly. I'll get that question a lot. Like, they'll be like, I've been lifting for 10 years. Have I reached my genetic potential? And I'm like, it could be, but I don't know what you've been doing those 10 years every single year. Have you been following your meal plan perfectly? Been working out hard with intentions perfectly? Are you doing all these things perfectly? Then if so, then probably yes at this point. But if you're doing everything half-assed, like, I don't know, like, probably not. And I've had some people who like will go 10 years and then they go on a program and then they do everything right, and all of a sudden they're exploding with muscle. And I'm like, well, you were doing a lot of things wrong. Don't give me the credit, because like, you just weren't lining up all these things right. You weren't eating enough protein. You weren't working out with the volume, intensity, all that. So that's the important one. So your newbie lifters, you're going to make your most amount of muscle gain your first year. The second year, you're going to make right around half of that, a little bit more than half of that. And as a realistic rule of thumb, let's say it's an average 120-pound bikini competitor. For someone of that size, it's going to be probably in that 8-pound marker, like that first year. Very first year of lifting. That's a lot of muscle in a year. And then after that, 4 to 5 pounds. And then after that, another year, so we're going 1 year each time, is going to be, 1 to 3 pounds the third year, maybe 2 to 4 pounds the third year, and then the fourth year, like 1 to 3 pounds. That's typically how it goes, and it just tapers down. So once you reach that point, things are going to change quite a bit. So I say, if you're a newbie lifter within your first 2 years of lifting, do as much perfectly as you can, because you can get the most benefit from it at that time. Really go after it, really study the sport, really do your meal plan right, really do your workouts with intention, because you're going to get so much bang for your buck every rep that someone like Ashley is not going to get anymore, because she's past that 2 year, 3 year time frame. So, your reps count for probably 1.5 of each of Ashley's, which is just, you're going to get there too. And it's just eventually, and you see these bodybuilders who do this and people are like, are you sure that happens? I'm like, dude, I'm positive it happens. Look at these bodybuilders. They'll be on stage at the highest level, the biggest men in the world. They get on stage. Then the next year, they're like, oh, he made huge progress this year. Then no, he looks so much better. He gained 1.5 pounds. Like, dude, this guy, he's 250 pounds to start with, and he only gained 1.5, 2 pounds. And you want to gain 5 pounds as a 120-pound bikini competitor 5 years in? Like, let's be realistic. You know what I mean? Right. So it's just not, so.
I did want to point out, though, with a newbie lifter, you probably will require a little more rest.
Yes.
So more rest days. So for me, I don't really need them as frequently as somebody that's like just beginning, because if you're a newbie lifter, you're not used to it, So you might need like a day, maybe 2 per week at least to recover, so that you can heal those muscles and get back to it. It's funny because I posted the other week, I had posted like a training split, and it was a 7-day training split, because I go through periods where, like, if I'm close to a show, I might work out like 7 days. If I'm not, I'll work out 6. And sometimes I'll take a whole freaking week off, as you know. But it caused like a lot of controversy, because they're like,
I didn't see that.
Whoa, 7 days? What, you don't have a rest day? And I'm sitting here, I'm thinking like, dude, if I train biceps, like, that's not going to like put me out. Like, oh my God, I trained biceps. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, full rest day.
I mean, I just can't make it through the day. You know what I mean? I'm just like, maybe it's just because I am a veteran lifter. So to me, like, yeah, I'll train like 7 days. It's nothing, because not every day is like a heavy leg day. Some days it's like, okay, it's like a bicep pump, Yeah. And but some people really were just like shocked. They're like, what? You need a rest day? And I'm just like, I don't know. Cause it's funny, cause some people will do like an hour of cardio every day of their life. But like, to me, that's more exhausting than doing a bicep workout.
Yeah.
I need more recovery from the hour of cardio than I would like a bicep workout.
For sure.
Unless these are just like newbie people that maybe they really do need it. I don't know. I think we use the overtraining a little too. Like,
our sport it's super hard to overtrain.
I know people like to really use that so they can take breaks, but It's
I,
hard.
I would love to take every person who said they overtraining and put them through one regular day of like an NCAA basketball player's routine. You know?
Yeah.
Then they'd be like, okay, I'm nowhere near overtrain. Like just a regular day of them just like starting season is like, you know, the morning drills, nighttime practice, weight room, and probably something else, you know, like it's like 6 hours of working out a day. And like, they're like, oh, you're overtraining with your 1 hour of bicep curls, you know,
Less than that. Jeez. Like,
it's like, yeah,
I'm just like, yeah, it's like, I don't know. It blows my mind that people think that like, if I train like a biceps or something, it's going to just put me out. But, you know, I do listen to my body. If I ever need a rest, I take one, but I don't think I need one as much as somebody that's beginning, obviously.
Yeah, that's going to be a thing. You know, you train your body to every time you work your body, you're basically creating a stress to your body. So it says, okay, I'm going to be better prepared for that the next time you try to do that to me. So that's the reason that you do a 10-pound curl and you do it 10 times. And the next time you go to the gym, you do a 10-pound curl and you do it 11 times, because the body said, okay, Adam's doing something now that requires me to lift this weight this many times in this fashion. So I'm going to recover. I'm going to be better. I'm going to be stronger. So when he does this again, I'll be more prepared for it, right? As long as I'm creating a stress that's new to the body has to find a way to adapt to it. That's why if you have a scar on your body, like any scars on your body, you can look at them. The skin is a little bit elevated where that scar is, right? Because you cut your body. It was stress to the body, and the body said, okay, I'm going to prepare myself for if that happens again. And I'm going to be more prepared for that the next time. So the skin's a little bit more elevated, right? It's called super overcompensation, right? So when you're giving a stress to your body and it overcompensates by recovering, it's going to do that in the muscle too. So you're doing these micro trauma, these micro tears to the muscle. When you're putting it under tremendous stress, it's going to recover. It's going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. So it's harder to do that to it the next time, right? So the same thing applies for frequency. You know, people think that it's just like the muscle and doing 10 pounds. The next time you're going to be able to do 11. It's also the frequency. Okay, now Ashley did this. She did it 4 times this week. Man, that was a lot. I'm going to be prepared, and now she could do it 5 times, because I guess we're doing that more frequently. And now it's 6 times, and now it's 7 times, and now the body's recovering at a much faster rate. And that's why we go back to the blacksmith, who's able to hammer with that same arm all day long with no problems. But if I tried to do that for 1 week straight, I'd be injured by the end of the week, because I wasn't prepared for that yet. But after 5 years of it, 10 years of lifting like you're doing, you could go blacksmith every day if you want. You're not going to have any problem with the arm. But yeah, it's a time thing. So at first you're swinging that heavy hammer, you're probably going to have 2 days max. You need a recovery period, a day off, a day rest. So yes, you're training not just your muscles to get stronger, but your ability to recover is going to get faster. You're going to build up this tolerance to being able to do things for longer periods of time, just like anything. When you're a baby and you're trying to walk across the room, you couldn't walk very far without falling over, right? Now you could walk around the world one time, right? So it's all these things just are micro progressions that we don't really even recognize, and the body's amazing machine compensating for what you're doing to it and being more prepared for whatever it is, and in either direction, So
absolutely,
yeah,
yep.
So newbie training versus veteran training, yes, as Ashley pointed out, you're going to be able to get away with more. You're going to be able to get away with more volume. You're going to be able to get more frequency. That's why you see these girls, like if the prep house girls we had this year was Elizabeth and Tina. They were working out twice a day for 10 weeks, 6 days a week, legs or glutes every day of that, every single day of the 6 days for 10 weeks straight, twice a day, doing something in the glutes. So it doesn't make sense. I'm the first one to tell you, and I put that workout together. It doesn't make logical sense, but they didn't overtrain. They both had a really good season. And Ashley prepped Tina to get a pro card. She had the best glutes she ever had. So tell me it didn't work, right? Because I got proof we got a pro card in the pose room telling you it did. So there's things that just don't make a lot of sense sometimes on paper, but we got to look at the actual the person who's doing it and their endurance and how long they've been doing it and whatnot too. And so anyway, there you go. All right, now so a newbie lifter, you're probably going to want to be starting to work out. A lot of times I start full newbies with circuits, and then work them up and do the circuits for 4 to 6 weeks. And then I work them into traditional lifts at 5 days and then 6 days, and then just see how the recovery is going and go through deloads more often and not. And then someone like you, deload is pretty much after the Olympia, or if you need it after a period of time, but it's not a requirement so often for you.
For me, it's more of a mental thing. I'm just a lot of I just want to, not think about working out for a week just because I do get over it at some point.
Yeah, some people, it's like they physically need it, and it's like, all right, yeah, take it every 8 weeks if you need it, type of thing. And then some people, it's just, mental clarity. And
yeah,
it's been a long time. We probably should do it. It's not like a requirement, that type of thing. So
I would say as well, though, it's like I mentioned, it's important to like listen to your body if you need it or not. And, you could be dealing with slight amount of injury without paying much attention to it, but that could also be a benefit as well. That's mostly due to like overuse kind of stuff, which thankfully in bikini we don't deal with much. It's funny because like when I did college track, I had so many overuse injuries, and it's knock on wood, I've had 0 in bikini. 0.
Yeah.
In track I had like shin splints, bursitis, tendonitis, stress fractures.
Sports are so much.
So yeah, a lot of overuse injuries.
Yeah.
But none in bikini so far, knock on wood.
Yeah. Yeah. Even like, yeah, my wrists and my shoulders are constantly beat up from what even my feet from just the boxing. Like it's just constant pain. And I'll be like, oh, I got to take the weekend off. And like, like a shoulder's been, go to the chiropractor, go to cold baths, all these things. And you're like, just in bodybuilding, it's just like, oh, I'm a little sore. I'm a little sore. Mm-hmm. So it's funny how people underestimate. It's because they didn't play sports going into this is why they don't realize like it's so much worse for you.
It really is.
Much worse for your joints and body.
One more thing I wanted to add with the newbie lifters, especially, don't put so much focus on how much weight you're lifting, more so about the form and are you feeling it, right? It's funny because some people will ask me like, how much weight should I be using? How much weight should I be using for my shoulder press? And I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
What's challenging for you? What I use isn't going to translate to what you use, but it's important to challenge yourself, but not really push the weights just to see how much you can lift. Again, we're in aesthetic sports, we're not seeing how much we can actually lift for a 1 rep max. So that can also be applied to a veteran lifter as well. Obviously, form is more important than the actual weight you use to an extent. I know those last few reps might be a little sloppy. That's okay. You pushed it to failure. But like as a newbie competitor, don't be like, oh, she was lifting 20 pounds. I got to do that too. And then their reps are all like sloppy and stuff. Yeah. It's important to develop good form. Really important to develop good form and really pay attention to what muscles you should be activating in that exercise. So it's good to get those good habits going so you don't form bad ones and then it just follows you throughout your career.
Yeah, I would say that and track your weights too, because you just need to create a stimulus. And if your first time in the gym, 10 pounds is light, you're still doing something that your body hasn't done. You're lifting a 10-pound curl 10 times. You write that down. The next week you do 10-pound curl 11 times or 12 times. And you do it with good form and you squeeze real hard. That's still more than your body was doing before. So that's still a stimulus to the body, right? So you just, your progression is going to be different than everyone else's. And don't get caught up in the weight. You're definitely right about that. Because I get that question a lot too. And I'm like, I have no idea how much you're going to lift. Like whatever.
Do you even know how much I lift?
Yeah.
I don't even know how much I lift. It's different every day.
When I train with Ashley, I'll go to these different gyms. So all of them weigh different.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So I'll put the pin in the thing and I'll like pull on the cable to see. I'm like, oh, that's about right. I give it to him. Like, let's just do whatever you fail at somewhere here. And like, if it's too easy of a set, then we raise it up 1 pin.
Yeah.
That's just how, how it goes when you're going to all these different gyms. What's funny? I went to Torture Gym. This is funny. It's funny. Went to Torture Gym yesterday. So I was like, it's another cool gym in Vegas. So shout out to them. It was a cool little gym. And then they had the weights in kilos. And then they had like a big 10 kilo. And Kimber's like, the weights are big here because it was 25, because it was a 10 kilo plate. And then she's like, these are heavy. And I was like, yeah, it's kilograms, man. It's kilograms. So cute. It was so funny because it's a big plate for the 25. It was really funny. That was a funny moment. I thought it was cute. you got to love her, All right. So, explaining body fat distribution is different and explaining muscle development is different. So everyone has like an area that they put on more fat
than the others. You can't pick and choose where you want the fat to go. That would be nice. I want the fat to go here, or ideally just evenly distributed, right? But that's not how it works for most people. And some people, it's more prominent than others. Like, we see competitors that like they're super, super lean everywhere except for maybe their midsection. And it's like, well, what do? Because if you get leaner, I mean, it's just going to make those already extremely too lean body parts even more so too lean. But then again, it makes your midsection look a little bit better. So, ideally, if you build a little more muscle in that area, it makes it project out more, which gives the appearance that it's leaner, but not a perfect scenario, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and that's the best thing, and I use it all the time, is your description of the pool, drinking water from the pool. If you store body fat more so on your glutes, that's going to be probably the last bit of water to leave the pool. She describes it as the water at the deep end of the pool, that's going to be the water that drains last. And if you store body fat on your glutes, and that's the more you store it and the hardest it is for you to lose it, well, that's the last water that's going to leave. So you're going to have to lose everything, maybe in accession, to get that body fat off of you and your glutes. And then you're going to have to pose everything softer to have your glutes look just the same. So it is different for everyone. Body fat distribution is a tough one because, very rarely. Now I will say, if you're someone who struggles with body fat, I will say 90% of women store body fat on their glutes, their thighs, and their triceps. That's that's like the common place for women to store body fat. That's the whole pear versus apple body type. Apple is going to be the guy mostly, where they store it all on their waistline. A big contributor to why guys tend to not live as long, so they store more weight on their chest area. And women store more body fat farther away from the heart area. So, there's less pressure on it at all times. So that's another thing. So, but yeah, we do have that's like your typical body fat distribution on women and on men separately. So, yeah. So something to think about. And if you're one of those people that just store body fat on your legs and thighs, just know 90% of all the other girls also store on their legs and thighs and on their triceps. So just the way that we're all built. And the ways around that is exactly how Ashley talked about, is building more muscle and building muscle to push through the fat. And that's something that you see with the bodybuilders of today, not being as lean as the bodybuilders of years back. Well, the reason is that they don't need to be as lean. They are a lot more muscular. So why would they, if the muscle is showing through just as much as it was back then, why lean out even more when it's unnecessary type of thing? So the older bodybuilders are like, oh, they're not as lean as we were. And I'm like, yeah, but they're 30 pounds heavier. Like they're way bigger. They don't need to be as lean. They look just as lean. You just know they're not because you got an eye for it, So, yeah, that's why you see that, because the muscle's going to pop through that. So yeah, you probably got to develop your tie-ins a little bit more, because you're gonna have to store more body fat there. It's just the way it is. You're gonna have to develop your tie-ins a little bit more. You're gonna have to develop your glutes a little bit more, so it pops through the body fat that's still there. You probably have to diet a little bit longer these days to get those tie-ins to be a little bit tighter, and it is what it is there. But everyone's dealing with the same thing there. So there are some scenarios where you'll have tough body fat distributions, though, where someone, let's say they don't store any body fat on their legs, so their legs look like really stringy and they have to get that lean to get their waist to get tight. And that's a tough one. There's not the way around that one is you're gonna have to build your legs pretty big to offset it, and hope that they don't look too dense and striated once they're that lean. And it's easier said than done. So there are some things that are going to be tough ones, but there's always ways to work around it potentially. Will you reach a limit at a certain point of, like, let's say a pro career? Possibly. It's definitely possible. I've seen it a few times, and you do run into that genetic thing at the upper tiers, but you shouldn't run into that too often at the lower levels. And even sometimes at a national level, you generally won't run into it. Where you run into is where you really start climbing and climbing the ranks, and this being just something you can't work past for some other people who just don't have that genetically, because that does come into effect eventually. Just like any sport, if you have a boxer with really long reach, like there's just something eventually where you get to that high level, you're just not going to be able to get past that reach. Your reach is too short. At the lower levels, no problem, but at the higher levels, you're just not going to be able to hang with that guy. He's got 6 inches reach on you. What are you going to do? So it's just, that's the same thing with all sports. I'm not going to go and slam dunk over Shaq. It's not my day against that guy. So that's all sports. So just something to think about. But hopefully you can find a way around most of them. And at the lower levels, you shouldn't have too many issues. So
Absolutely. But just know we all have our pluses and minuses. So you're not the only one, whether that be a weird distribution of body fat or maybe a stubborn muscle that you can't grow. So that leads me into the next point. What do you suggest for somebody that has like an extreme lagging body part muscular wise? Like, I say my tip would be prioritize that muscle and make sure it gets all the attention. Well, most of your attention, not all attention. So whether that means like training that particular body part maybe 3 times a week instead of just one, perhaps that means even doing like a carb spike day around that body part training day you could do. But that's also a thing that happens. We all have our lagging body parts. We already know what mine is. So
yeah, it's a multi-layered question. So let's say it's a really tough body part to work on. First, you want to do is you want to look at someone's, look at their postural alignment and see if there's anything that's going to be impeding the ability for that muscle to contract a lot, right? What's the commonalities of that, right, between people? So looking at, for you, for example, like your shoulders, you didn't have any issues with your shoulders of your postural alignment where that would be an issue. Could it have been an issue though? Yeah. If you had, let's say, like a protracted shoulder girdle, which basically means like you have a lot of rounding to the front of your shoulders, and you had, let's say, lagging rear delts, right? So the protracted shoulder girdle is like when you're rounded like this. A lot of people who work at desks are like this. What happens when this happens? Well, when I'm like in this position, and if you're listening, I'm kind of rotated forward on my shoulders, rounded upper back position. What happens is, my chest is being flexed here in this position, right? My front delt is being a little bit flexed in this position, but what's happening on the opposing side of that? Well, my rear delt is being stretched, my lats are being stretched, right? So of course I'm not going to get the best rear delt development and the best lat engagement when I'm in a constant state of stretched muscle, right? So first you want to look at that and say, okay, is there anything posturally aligned that we could get better at to see if that's the issue, right? She's not contracting in that area. And if so, let's work on the posture. You can go to a chiropractor, have them assess that, and make sure that they're giving you corrective stretches to bring your body into proper alignment. Intraset stretch, when you have something like that, let's say, for that example, like your rear delt, you'd stretch your chest intraset. You could go through the Newbie New Fit sessions and make sure that you're getting the most activation that you can in that area. And then when you eliminate all those other things, then you're going to want to go into exactly what you said, isolation exercises, Newbie New Fit training, working them in, all the time, as long as your body can handle it. Make sure that you're doing exercises where you can feel that muscle working in the way that it needs to work. If you can't activate your glutes, which seems to be dying, but that one was an annoying trend. Everyone was like, I can't activate my glutes. And I'm like, you are saying what every other girl on Instagram is saying right now. This never was a thing before. Now for 6 months, everyone can activate their glutes, right? Do you think you're being influenced by other people at this point? So I don't hear about it very often anymore, but man, that one was frustrating because you'd be like, what exercises can I do? And I'm like, you're already doing all the exercises. These are the same exercises. There's very rarely going to be a new developed glute exercise at this point. Like if you're activating just fine. Now, the thing is, you want to pick exercises that you feel though. Let's say you feel nothing in your glutes at all, but you feel the glute kickback. Well, do 10 sets of glute kickbacks, to warm up and get that muscle primed, and then go into your hip thrust glute bridges, right? Nothing wrong with that. Get that muscle activated, that would be the thing. But yeah, you're going to do a lot of volume. You're going to do isolation exercises. And the thing is, the farther you get in your career of bodybuilding, the less other muscles you're going to work. So, when let's say, okay, so Ashley has really good hamstrings at this point. Why does she need to train hamstrings 7 days a week, right? Well, because she's not training them 7 days a week, she can go have less days on her hamstrings and put more of those days towards other muscle groups that aren't as developed. So now, okay, hamstrings are done. Check off the list. Now we can train those, a couple times a week, keep them there. That's one of her strong points. We do want to keep them still active because it's a strong point of hers, but it's not an overdeveloped no one's ever said, oh, she's got too much hamstring, right? That's when you'd have to be like, okay, let's stop training those hamstrings for a while. So we take those days and we're like, let's apply it to those shoulders now. We have more time there, right? You're doing workouts for bikini and you realize, oh, I shouldn't be training chest. Like there's no benefit of you doing chest if you're a bikini athlete. Like you shouldn't be doing it. It's pretty much a waste of time. If you have a developed chest, it's probably going to hurt you more than help you. Judges don't want to see pecs on a girl in bikini. It's a fitness model competition. So if you just heard this and you're doing chest right now and you're doing it, let's say twice a week, well, hey, I just freed up 2 days for you to apply to shoulders, right? So you keep kind of eliminating and reducing other exercises until you build this perfect sculpture of bikini. And that's where you're going to, you'll end up getting there faster and faster. Because now not only are you doing your glutes more often, but you're able to recover at a faster rate because you've been doing it for a longer period of time now. So now all these things are adding up in succession. And then the next thing you know, you have that perfect bikini sculpture after, a year's time, which if you would have stayed with that same split would have taken you 3 years' time. So, yeah.
Amen.
That was a long one, huh?
Yeah,
I wanted a little bit of a tangent there.
Oh, it was very helpful information.
Riled up.
That's so funny.
All right, let's see. Next one. Common bikini flaws. Didn't you cover this one, Ashley?
Yeah, we'll go into it very quickly because we have almost out of time today. Quads being too big and dense and lean. We already kind of went over that a lot. But another issue is people with blocky waists. That's one of the things in bikini that can definitely hurt your placing is having a blocky waist. So, that's one of those things that's hard to change genetically. I would say make sure digestion's on point. Make sure you avoid exercises that would activate your obliques. And also sometimes even going as far as reducing your some compound movements because that's very much likely to engage your core. Now that's pretty extreme though. So with the blocky waist too, one thing you can do is if you can't change it, you build around it. So make everything else kind of bigger to give the appearance that your blocky waist isn't as blocky as it actually is. So building those shoulders, building the back, even the quad sweep a little bit to an extent. So this can help reduce the appearance of a blocky waist.
Yeah. And then if you have that, then working with a solid posing coach too, to have you transition without exposing your waist and pose for a smaller waistline. And there are girls who are doing it at a high level that have blockier waists that are, they're very good with how they're posing. You hide your weaknesses, show your strengths. But you pretty much covered all that too. Yeah. I think you got all that covered. Yeah, there was really nothing else there, but yeah, that's definitely part of it.
Absolutely. So a last question before we end today's podcast, Adam, if you could answer the question, is there a difference between training for muscle growth versus training to get lean? And this is not including cardio. This is talking strictly weights.
No. Yeah, that's a good question. No, you might there. And where this gets messed up is all these like 7-minute ab videos and these workout videos where are like, lean out with this 30-minute workout videos. And then it somehow gets put into like our bodybuilding world. The leaning out is always going to happen with the diet. It's always going to happen with the diet. And, the more it's always going to be that calorie balance thing. Move more, eat less. That's how you're going to lean out. It's not going to be with your exercises. There was one time Phil Heath made a great example of this question because people was like, because people kept asking him, do you change your rep range when you're getting ready for the Olympia? And he was like, why would I change my rep range? Like he goes, it's been working this whole year. And now when it's the most important, I'm going to try something different. And he's like, no, I keep it the same all year long. I keep it the same, my rep range, because I'm going to do what's working to build muscle. I'm not going to go to something that potentially could cost me muscle, like higher reps, because I think it might burn an extra few calories. Because, when we think about it, that's where it comes in is people think, oh, I'll go high reps, I'll burn more calories. Well, not really. You're not really going to burn that many more calories. And really the calories that you will burn, you could make up for if you with probably 5 more minutes of cardio that you would have if you did 25 reps versus 12. But the key with you going into prep is keeping muscle. That's always the key. It's not about building muscle at that point. If you can build muscle, hats off to you, but you're generally going pretty hard to build into a show. There's pretty rare that people can actually like grow into a show. So you're just trying to keep into a show. So you need heavy weight, you need hard lifts, you need to stress the muscle. That way your body hangs on to it. Because otherwise the body's going to say, hey, I'm not eating enough. I'm not really lifting that much weight anymore as I was before, because you're going easy now. Now you're going with higher reps and lower weight. I don't have the same stress that I had before. I'm not eating that much. let's get rid of some of this stuff that's burning all these calories. And what's that? That's muscle, right? And that's why you lose some muscle during that time period, because your body's trying to find, again, path of least resistance. What's the easiest way to live to get there? That's all the body thinks about. What's the easiest way to do it? Well, the easiest way is get rid of some of this gas consuming muscle that I'm carrying around. Even if it's just a couple pounds, it might be 20 calories a day, you know? So what you're trying to do is you're trying to fight that, and you need to give yourself some hard lifts. You definitely don't make it easier by doing just circuits and things like that at the end. You keep those lifts the same. It's always eat less, move more. That's how you're going to burn the fat off the muscle. It's not going to be, do 25 reps versus 20 reps, which I guess does go against what I just said, because that is moving more technically. So I burned myself there. Burned myself twice. That's a second-degree burn.
Burn yourself like a calorie.
Yeah, exactly.
That was dumb. So just to kind of clarify, or I guess pick your brain a little further before we end.
Yeah.
So if somebody was used to doing like 8 to 10 reps, and let's say they did try 25 reps, wouldn't that create any stimulus even though the weight is not as high?
So, when we're talking about raw stimulus of like just creating a stimulus, yeah, but it would be more in the endurance muscle fibers too. But there's nothing wrong with that. If you're constantly changing your workouts, I guess I should, because that is a good question on that. Because let's say...
because I'm a fan of burnout reps too.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I love me some burnout reps.
Okay, so this does go farther, which is actually really cool, because I never talked about this, but it does go farther. Okay, so here's the thing about low reps versus high reps. What we're trying to do is create a stimulus on the muscle. And this was a cool study that I read a long time ago, and maybe someone could find it. I've read so many of these things that I forget like where they are and whatnot. But essentially they were testing what is a superior method of building muscle and creating a stimulus through exercise. And the thought process was, just because of how I kind of explained and led to earlier, is that heavy weight is always going to be the best way to create a stimulus, right? And build muscle, that low rep, high weight stuff, right? So because you're going to engage more of the white muscle fibers, right? And that was always the answer. That was always like the question. Okay, do you engage more of the white muscle fibers, or if you get to a rep range where it's realistic, not 50 reps or anything like that, or if you get to a rep range where you're still reaching failure, let's say it's 20, and you're reaching failure, is that's just the same stimulus with reduced risk of injury as doing 6 to 8 with extremely heavy loads. And everyone said, oh no, there's no way, because your white muscle fibers aren't going to be as stimulated. They'll do a little bit, but they won't be as stimulated. You're going to engage more red muscle fiber when you're lifting a weight that you can lift 20 times. Like it's unnecessary to recruit those white muscle fibers at that ability of lifting weights, because it's so relatively light to the muscle fibers abilities, right? So what they did is they tested engagement, they tested all these things, and they found that, yes, they were right. The red muscle fiber did come into action earlier on in the rep range. But what was strange, what they didn't find, what they didn't see coming, was that the white muscle fiber, once the red muscle fiber was extremely exhausted, actually started coming up again in higher rate of use towards the end.
Hey, I got you. You're tired. I got you now.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So it went from a white muscle fiber being the only thing being able to use, right? Or mostly being able to use, because the weight's too heavy, the red muscle fiber couldn't support it. It could only give a little bit of that action as a supporting system. And then went to, mostly red, because the white muscle fiber wasn't necessary. Then the white muscle fiber kind of came in to take over when the red muscle fiber was fatigued. So kind of a cool thing. So can you create a stimulus through either mechanism? Yes. So the key is that you don't decrease the intensity of the lifts within it.
Just because it's lighter and do more reps, it shouldn't be easier.
Yes. It's all about intensity versus actual reps. So to put a final thing on that, if you're switching from, let's say, 8 reps to 12 reps throughout the year, then you're going to 20 reps, 15 to 20 reps, and you're doing it like every other month or however you're doing it, as long as you're creating the same level of intensity is really the most important thing. But yes, if you're going to something like 50 reps, you're going to do that all the time, or doing circuit training in your prep because you think it's going to burn more calories. I don't recommend that at all. I think that's going to hurt you. But yes, as long as you're creating intensity behind things, then you're going to be just fine. You should be able to keep your muscle, but it's all about that intensity. Your body's not going to want to hold on to the muscle when it's in these extreme calorie restrictions. So you're going to need to create a stimulus to keep it, and even more so when you're working out with less calories than when you have more calories. So there you go.
Heck yeah.
That was kind of fun.
That was a great episode. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Sorry, I had going into this episode, so you guys, I did a lot of talking here. going to this episode, I'm not trying to overtalk Ashley. She said, hey, my voice,
said,
you're going to probably have to talk a lot this
Yeah,
time.
I said, Adam, please, you're going to have to do most of the talking because I don't sound very pleasant and people will tune out.
So,
but also, this is definitely an
hey,
topic.
People appreciate you hanging in there with this one. People are going to be like, she's a trooper.
I'm here for the thumbnail.
You know, the thumbnail will not change. The quality of the thumbnail will be at its best as always. So anyway, guys, thank you so much. Talk to you next week.